Welcome back. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer revealing he has obtained financial records of Hunter Biden. They show Hunter Biden received a total of $260,000 from Chinese nationals on wires that listed Joe Biden's Delaware home as the beneficiary address. These payments from Beijing happening just months after Joe Biden launched his 2020 presidential campaign. Joining me right now is Kansas Congressman Jake LaTurner. He is on the House Oversight and Appropriations Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for being here. Congressman LaTurner, I'd like to get your take on this. What do we need to understand about these wires?
It's good to be with you. What you need to understand are two things. Number one, this is a big deal. Joe Biden told the American people that his family received no money from China. Jonathan Lee, the person that paid over $250,000 to Hunter Biden, is a member of the Chinese Communist Party. He's well known for buying up land in the United States. He had a personal relationship with then Vice President Joe Biden, where Joe Biden was writing letters of recommendation for his son. And Hunter Biden, while living in California, used his father's address in Delaware to receive this wire transfer. And the second reason why this matters is because the House Oversight Committee is continually uncovering more information.
What specifically were they being paid for? Jonathan Lee sends Hunter Biden $250,000 for what?
That is the question, Maria. You know, the word that is used, overused, misused is gaslighting these days, but it actually applies here. That's what the president is doing to the American people. We all see the evidence. We know that we wouldn't trust Hunter Biden to clean out a birdcage, and yet he received millions of dollars from companies in China, Ukraine, Romania, and the rest. We know that we wouldn't trust him to do anything. He received this money. We know why. It's because his dad was the vice president of the United States of America. We are not going to stop until we get to the bottom of this, uncover the details in the House Oversight Committee. It is incredibly important that we do that for the American people.
Do you believe that Joe Biden changed policy to favor China as a result of getting all of this money from Communist Party members?
What we've seen so far is the president change his story. He told us his family received no money from China. We heard him say that he didn't discuss the business dealings with his son. Then he said that there was a wall in between his son and him when it comes to business. And we have proven, the House Oversight Committee has proven, that that is wrong time and time and time again. The president was absolutely on the phone talking about business. The president withheld $1 billion from Ukraine until they fired a prosecutor that was investigating his son, Hunter Biden. The connections are clear, and importantly, we received testimony from IRS whistleblowers who said that they saw a connection between this corruption, the shell companies, the money, and the president, but they weren't allowed to pursue it because the Justice Department shut them down. The American people deserve answers on this, and we're going to make sure that they get them.
It's just unbelievable that you're talking about the evidence that you are, and yet the Democrats will not acknowledge it. You've got the House Oversight Committee first impeachment inquiry hearing happening tomorrow. What are you hoping to accomplish? Tell us how that plays out.
It's an important hearing because we're going to set the baseline for the American people. We're going to talk about all the information that we've uncovered since January, that there are 20 shell companies, over $20 million in payments to 9 Biden family members. The most recent information about the IRS whistleblowers and the $250,000 paid to Joe Biden's address from a member of the Chinese Communist Party. We're going to talk about all the information that we've gathered so far and make the case to the American people why it's important that this investigation continues.
This is just incredible. I mean, it really is stunning, and thank you for uncovering and exposing this. But at the same time, you are battling a government shutdown, which may very well happen next week. And does that mean this investigation stops?
No. So first of all, we need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. It's important that we keep the government open. All House Republicans are saying is that we want to keep the government open, but this administration has to start caring about our southern border crisis. We have people dying every single day from fentanyl overdoses. We have people on the terrorist watch list crossing our southern border. This is a major issue, and the administration has turned a blind eye to it. It is unacceptable for Joe Biden to care more about Ukraine than he does about our own southern border. And so we are going to insist that that is part of the conversation in keeping the government open. I think it is a fight worth having. Hopefully, Joe Biden cares more about keeping the government open and securing the southern border than he does about being right about Ukraine or whatever the case may be. We can do this.
Yeah. Are you referring to the continuing resolution that has an 8% cut in spending, which was worked on by Byron Donalds and Scott Perry and others, where the border is the central piece? Because I know that a lot of your members have already said, I'm a no, because there's money to Ukraine. You're trying to advance 4 spending bills this week. Speaker McCarthy says that he expects to advance the continuing resolution on Friday. But the Senate may beat you to the punch. They're voting to advance their own short-term funding bill to avoid a government shutdown. So, Congressman, tell me where you are in terms of these 4 bills. Are you focused on Homeland Security or the defense bill? What does it look like? What kind of success are you expecting?
Well, as your question alluded to, Maria, there are a lot of moving parts to this right now. I think that Republicans are the strongest when we stick together. We are working every day, one day at a time, to make sure that we stick together on a plan, because that's how we're going to get something done with the Democrat-led Senate and the Democrat-led White House. It is incredibly important that we get something done on our border. The American people understand that this is a crisis. They understand that the president ought to care more about our border than he does about Ukraine. Sadly, that hasn't been the case. And so we have to use the power of the purse to force this issue.
Right.
And we're going to do that. And I'm confident at the end of the day, there are a lot of different bills out there, but I'm confident at the end of the day, Republicans will stick together and get this done, keep the government open, and do the right thing on the southern border.
Well, it sounds like you don't have the votes. So I was talking about the individual bills. Do you have any clarity or visibility on any of these individual bills, defense, Homeland Security, or are you focused on that continuing resolution? And if you are, and there's Ukraine money in there, that means you don't have the votes, right?
Well, there's 2 different things going on here. Number one, the government shuts down at 12:01 Sunday morning. And the other is that we need to pass all of our appropriations bills. I'm on the Appropriations Committee. We are cutting spending less money next year than we do this year for the first time in a decade, the most open and transparent process that we've had in a very long time. We need more time to pass all of those appropriations bills. So a CR of some kind does make sense.
Right.
We one day at a time, sweet Jesus, Marie, we're going to figure this out.
Right.
But we don't, it's a process, and we will get there.
No, I understand. I mean, one day at a time, sure, I get that. But, you know, it's September 30th, and you knew that date was coming. How come these bills weren't ready in time?
Well, Maria, at the end of the day, our job is to get the work for the American people done, and we are going to do that.
Okay.
I agree with you. The process needs to move quicker. The American people expect that of us. It is hard to corral 218 votes, but we are going to do it at the end of the day.
I totally understand, yes. Congressman, thank you. We'll be watching your work, important work. Jake LaTurner joining us in D.C. Thank you, sir.